Welcome back to the Woven Well podcast. We're talking about gut health today, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think that gut health can have a massive impact on our reproductive health and cycles, but also our overall health and our wellness. It's all interconnected. And so today I've invited Rita Johnson from Divine Mercy Nutritional Care to join us to really learn about why gut health matters so much and what type of an impact it can have on our reproductive cycles. Hopefully, we'll even hear a few tips to help us start improving our gut health today. So, Rita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Caitlin. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited about it too. We have a couple of mutual acquaintances, and a friend of mine is a client of yours, and she has just raved about her work with you. And I'm pretty sure that her words were life changing. So I'm excited about that and really glad that you would take the time to share with our audience. So we're going to talk about all things gut health. And so maybe we should start with why is gut health so important?
I love it. I This is so important, and I just want to start with a brief story. I had a client one
Okay.
time who was having some issues, and I could see on the chart that her gut was really she's having very poor gut health, but the poor dear, she was really stressed out. She's just trying to figure out how to chart her cycles. They had been contracepting and trying to switch to a natural method. And she just said to me, she goes, "Look, if you're just talking about my gut, I don't want anything to do with it. But if it's going to change my fertility, then please just tell me what to take." And I was like, oh, there's so much lack of information here because it's so
Yes.
important what's going on in our gut and what's going on in so many other systems in our body, but particularly our hormones. And that's why that has truly become my mission, is just to help women in this intersection between gut health and their hormonal health and what they can do to really help themselves feel better. So there's this huge, strong correlation here, not the least of which being if we're not consuming healthy fats, we're not going to make cholesterol based hormones, which are our sex hormones, right? Our progesterone, our estrogen, testosterone. If we're not absorbing those beautiful healthy fats that you are consuming, you're not going to make your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of lacking information on what can we do if we've identified there is low progesterone. We're kind of just stuck a lot of times, or we can take progesterone, but doing that ongoing, some women don't feel well when they're doing that. And so then they feel really frustrated that that's the only solution they have. But there is a lot that we can do to really help support the body to make its own progesterone. And starting the gut is a great way to go.
That's so encouraging. And we actually recently had a webinar with another individual, and she was talking about how to naturally increase low progesterone. And half of everything she gave was dietary. And I'm thinking, we think about it in terms of, oh, eat this food and it will help with progesterone, or eat that food. And what I'm hearing you say is it's what happens to it within the gut that allows for the whole body health as well, including our reproductive system. And so gut health is it's complex. It's multifactorial, but it really can have a noticeable impact.
It truly can impact everything else about what's going on in our body. So I like to think of it as a foundational system of our body, right? We have these foundations of our health, digestion, the whole digestive process being one of them. Another one, and this is one that we do hear a lot more in our circles, but is our blood sugar balance. So if we're not regulating our blood sugar, this is why it's so common for someone to really get that deep dive into what's going on, particularly in the fem world, with getting fasting glucose, insulin, and then seeing, what, you're insulin resistant. Let's get you on some medication, and then that can help support our fertility and ovulation.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, it really is whole body health. Now, we talk a lot about fertility and women's health specifically here on the Woven Well podcast. And I love how much you're talking about charting as well. And you mentioned a client, you could see gut health issues on her chart. Maybe you could touch on that a little bit. Like, what would gut health show up as on a Creighton chart? Because a lot of our listeners are using the Creighton model system.
Yes, for sure. So the biggest one that right away I'm like, okay, what other symptoms are you presenting? Is if I see a lot of continuous discharge, so mucus all month long, even if it's very obvious for that client to be able to say like, but this is my fertile window, this is where it's starting and stopping, but they're having mucus all month long. A lot of times, particularly that gummy gluey, we talk as we present the picture dictionary, we talk about how that gummy gluey, particularly this one kind, is indicative of some type of inflammation at the cervix, but truly it can be systemic inflammation as well that's presenting on the chart as gummy gluey, or just having mucus all cycle long. I've definitely seen that be more thyroid related, but our thyroid and our immune system, a lot of times there's this really close, intimate relationship with our gut. And so this is the problem when we see the body from a siloed perspective of like, this is your hormonal health, therefore it has nothing to do with your thyroid, which has nothing to do with your gut, which has nothing to do with your brain. And yet we know that it is more holistic, right? We're not just our stomach, we're not just our reproductive hormones. And so all of these things are going to make a difference there. Another thing I'll see on the charting that tells me that we need to do some upstream, particularly looking at organs that are critically involved in our digestive process, are things like big clots during menstruation. If somebody's having a lot of clotting, or other things that we may not actually be seen on the chart that are showing that we need to support the liver. The liver has 500 known functions in the body. One of them is to allow for our hormones, after we've used them up, to be filtered through the liver and then passed out through our digestive tract. And if that is not working well, then we can have things like estrogen dominance. So that's something else we can see on the chart. If we're noticing a really long fertile window, that could be something else going on with that liver health. So those are a few of the top ones that I think of right off the top of my head, but there are a lot more that when we really dive into some of these other symptoms that a woman's experiencing, that we can correlate back to a further need to support their gut health, to support their hormonal health.
I am really fascinated by all of that because I think about client charts that I've seen and how often we're able to go back and, with the partnership with Napro Technology, be able to pinpoint other things going on. And how often do we see blood sugar issues? Do we see insulin resistance? Do we see thyroid dysfunction? And we notice it first on the chart. And we can have them diagnosed and we can have them treated, but not everybody wants to be on a medication. Not everyone wants to take a hormonal supplement the rest of their lives. So you're giving us this insight into how the body works together, which I 1000% agree with you on that. And it's important to see the body as a whole, just like we see the person as a whole, mind, body, spirit. And so that's critical. But then there are actually things that we can do on our own, even outside of a medical professional, to be able to support our systems and our bodies. And specifically the digestive system, I think that's really important too. So what makes a gut healthy? Like, how do you know if you have a healthy gut and digestion is going well versus a gut that maybe has some issues, whether it's on the chart or just in your experience? How do you know if a gut is healthy or not?
I love this question. It's just like cervical mucus, right? Unless we're talking about this really openly and honestly, we have no idea of what other women's experiences are and what is truly healthy. We just know what's normal for us. So I love to talk about like, what is a regular bowel movement? We want to be sure that we're having a regular bowel movement at least daily, but it should be the consistency of peeled banana. You should be able to eliminate without any pushing or straining. Cleanup should be a minimal, and you should feel like you've completely evacuated the bowels after having had a bowel movement. If one of those things is not happening in that way, then you're not having regular bowel movements. In other words, you could actually be going to the bathroom once, twice, 3 times a day and still constipated, right? There could be a whole host of other things going on because you're not completely eliminating the bowels. It's not a good consistency. There's something else going on that needs support. So that's kind of the first thing. Anytime we have symptoms presenting in our digestive tract, if you have heartburn, indigestion, if you have pain after digesting, if you're experiencing bloating regularly, all of these things are secondary additional signs that, hey, we really need to listen to what your body's telling us and how can we support your digestive tract. In addition to those things, then we're kind of looking at, what about your skin health? Our skin is one of the podcasters I listen to, she says skin is an inside job, right? So we know that if something is exhibiting on our skin, that's telling us something, that what is reflecting what's going on inside. My son has some really severe food sensitivities, and if he eats them, he gets this like rash that some people would call eczema all over his arms, and it takes a while for his flare to calm down. And anytime that happens, we know we need to look at, how can we support the gut, how can we support what he's eating, what he's digesting, and then rebuilding what is there.
Oh man, I'm loving all of this because it goes along with everything that we focus on really at Woven Well, which is getting back to the root cause and honoring God's design for our bodies. So we're not just taking a pill for this or a pill for that and a pill, I mean, all the things that you said, whether it's uncomfortable bowel movements or acid reflux or eczema, there's a pill for all those things or a lotion or a whatever. But why do all of that? And then our liver has to process all of those things. Why do all that when we can really go back to supporting the foundation of how we are designed to function as humans and really nurture those foundational pieces so that we can feel better overall in all sorts of areas, including reproductive health. The story that you gave at the beginning about the woman who said, only if this is going to help my charting or my fertility or my cycles do I want to do this. And I really think that that's a product of the medical environment that we've lived in for so long. And at the same time, we as women just sort of put ourselves on the back burner. Like, I don't really have the time or the effort to care about me. But if it's going to positively impact other people, so maybe the window of fertility is shorter or she doesn't have to go to the doctor, then okay, then I'll do it. But it's a reminder that it is worth it for ourselves because God designed our bodies with this beautiful, complex, intricate intention. And we can work within that system and actually feel healthier and happier too. And I think that's really critical. So thank you for bringing that up and giving some very practical examples of that. I would imagine that you've had some clients over the years who have experienced some pretty dramatic changes by focusing in on this gut health.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most dramatic, I will say, was a client I was working with right now. Made some pretty big dietary changes. She was kind of eating a little more standard American diet. And so we really zeroed in on, a lot of the things we hear, but sometimes we don't take them to heart or we struggle to implement. So increasing protein, eating more vegetables, being sure that she was metabolizing those well, being sure that her body was really feeling supported in that process. And she went from extremely light cycles to within, and one thing I will say is sometimes there's a delay, right? Sometimes it takes about 90 days because that's about the time it takes from when an egg is chosen to develop in a follicle until that egg is released to ovulation. And so when we make these lifestyle changes, when we make dietary changes, it can take 90 days for us to really start to see a difference. But within 1 month, she noticed a difference in her next menstruation. It started to get heavier and she started
Wow.
to notice more of a flow, whereas before it was just spotting. So it was really rewarding for her. And she called me up and she was like, what else can I do right now? She was so excited to dive in and add on and just figure out how to do all of the things at once. And I had to slow her down a little bit because I didn't want her to be too aggressive and burn out. But it is super exciting to see that change, to see more cervical mucus, to see a longer post-peak phase. All of these positive changes we want to see, whether it's because we're trying to support fertility so that we can conceive, or whether it's we're trying to support our fertility so that we can be healthier, right?
Yes.
So it's just really beautiful to see that.
Well, I feel like that client because now I'm interested, like what are things that we could do to improve our own gut health? Like just small things that we could potentially implement in the next week or two.
Yeah. So the very first thing I will say, and I think because of exactly what you hit on, Caitlin, where, we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. And sometimes when I ask women, how are they feeling? Do they notice any digestive issues? They don't even know. Like they'll tell me that
Mm.
I really don't know. So that's the first thing I would just really recommend. Start listening to your body. Anytime we have something happen, we kind of listed off like heartburn, bloating, not having complete bowel movements, like those kinds of things. Just listen a little more to your body. Is this a certain time of day? Is this after I eat a certain meal? Is this after I eat driving somewhere in the car and I'm stressed out? Is this after, some of these things that we might find correlation, or you might notice that, what, I think this is all the time. I think every day I get dressed and I think I can wear this now, but I can't wear it later in the day. That's a problem. That's something we want to dive into. Your body's communicating something to you that it needs to be supported. Beyond that, when we're looking at like preparing our food, I think we're hearing more, at least in my circles, I feel like more people are talking about, improving our healthy fats. So trying to be sure that they're well sourced. If your budget allows, grass-fed butter and organic olive oil and coconut oil, and we buy like a half a cow and eat out of that in our freezer, and we'll render the tallow and use that. It's a budget stretcher for sure if you're able to buy like a large chunk of animal and then just do it yourself. Those healthy fats are so important, especially when we're talking about hormonal health, but also to help support and heal the digestive tract. Because, a lot of times when we do have inflammation there, we need something to help us anti-inflame if we have inflammation running out of check, right? And so we want to calm down that fire, that inflammation. And fat is a really great way to do that, especially when it's well sourced. Other things, of course, try to eat lots of colors. Those fibrous vegetables are ways that our body can really feed the microorganisms that are living in our gut. We can't digest them, we can't break them down, but those microbes can. And so that's really good to help support a healthy microbiota. Another thing I would say too is just really, again, if you start to make these shifts and changes and you start to notice, I actually don't like salad, or when I eat more vegetables, I feel worse, I feel more bloated. That's another way your body is just telling you it needs support. So don't get frustrated, just make a note and then start to dive in from there. That's a big thing I really want to encourage everyone in. And other ways that we can really support our hormonal health are those intangibles that we sometimes overlook, right? Lots of deep breathing throughout the day, lots of stress reduction measurements, lots of things like that are going to make a big difference in how we're metabolizing and breaking down our nutrients and then able to use them in our body as well.
I love every one of those. Such a good point and very realistic things that we can begin now. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of these lovely pieces of information about gut health with us, Rita.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. This is so fun. I always love talking about gut health.
Well, listeners, if you'd like to connect with Rita, make sure to go to our show notes because we'll have information there as well as links, and she has a freebie for you, so we'll have all of that in the show notes. Listeners, this is such a beautiful reminder that as humans and as women, our design is beautifully interconnected. We cannot abuse or even neglect our gut and not expect it to impact the other systems of the body. Just as we can't expect to abuse or neglect our minds and not have that take a toll on our spirits, our body's organs and systems, they're going to be interconnected just like our mind, body, and spirit is. This is the beautiful design of the Lord for our health and thriving. We are healthier and happier when we understand and work within this good design. So I'm so grateful that she was able to share that with us today. As always, thanks for listening as we continue to explore together what it means to be woven well.